These two posts came across my feed today, and I thought they were pretty interesting because they seem to be very opposite from one another. This post from Nick talks about what I consider to be a false choice between taking action and something Nick is referring to as perfectionism. The reason that I think it's a false choice is because I think there are continuums between a bias for action that starts with no bias to acting and ends with an extreme bias to acting, and the concept of perfectionism, which is itself a separate continuum between some amount of pre-planning and an extreme amount of pre-planning. Both of these continua are difficult to deal with at their extremes, but they're not opposites of one another. It's entirely possible to have a bias for action that considers key elements of the decision to be made in what I consider to be a fit-for-purpose solution. Some decisions can be made quickly because they don't have a lot of impact if something goes wrong, or they don't carry a lot of risk, or there are not so many long-term side effects from making the wrong decision. As the post from Catherine points out, there are key things that if you don't do them now, they will have long-term and lasting effects, and sometimes they can be pretty significantly negative. So this idea is we don't want to celebrate people who just make decisions and letting the chips fall where they may. The reason for that is because there are usually any number of people behind this leader who just rambles on forward. And I'm not suggesting that Nick is this leader. To be clear, it's the mindset that is challenging. So if Nick has been successful, fantastic. I'm happy to hear that. What I would be very curious about is how many people behind Nick were responsible for sort of making up for the gaps in the planning. We definitely don't want to overplan. We don't want to get caught in the paralysis of analysis. We do want to think about the decisions that we're making before we make them. And if we can de-risk them by taking a smaller step forward, we should absolutely do that. Let's just not set up a false choice between taking action and the concept of perfection.